من المهم الاستفادة من التجارب والخبرات الدولية. بيشرفنا في هذه الجلسة أن نستعرض لأهم التجارب، من بينها بالتأكيد التجربة الفنلندية، والتي أصبحت تتبوأ المرتبة الأولى في التعليم في تقرير التنافسية العالمي. تستعرض هذه التجربة سعادة السفيرة تولا يرجولا سفيرة فلندا بالقاهرة، وأيضا التجربة البريطانية التي تجمع بين العراقة والحداثة. يستعرضها لنا السيد جيف سترايتر من المدير الحالي للمجلس الثقافي البريطاني بالقاهرة. وأيضا ماليزيا من الدول التي تشارك مع مصر في كثير من الظروف. قد نجحت التجربة الماليزية أن تفرض نفسها على الساحة الدولية كنموذج لدول العالم الثالث، والتي أصبحت في صدارة النمور الآسيوية. يستعرض لنا التجربة الماليزية السيد إسحاق سليمان، مدير قسم الدراسات الماليزية كلية الاقتصاد والعلوم السياسية جامعة القاهرة. بتدير هذه الجلسة الدكتورة نرمين النعماني، منسق التعاون الدولي بوزارة التربية والتعليم الفني. بنعتذر مرة أخرى على تأخر هذه الجلسة، ولكن يعني نبدأ وتبدأ الدكتورة نرمين النعماني إدارة هذه الجلسة. اتفضلي يا فندم.
طبعا زي ما دكتور احمد الجيوشي يتكلم، اكيد في مشاكل في التعليم في مصر، بس كمان انا حابه ان احنا نتكلم على التجارب الناجحه، وفي تجارب كتير برضو ناجحه. واحنا لو هنتكلم مثلا على شهادات زي الاي بي او زي الاي جي او الامريكان او الستام سكولز اللي اتعملت من قبل الوزاره، احنا هنلاقي ان في اوائل على العالم من اولادنا في المدارس، لان هم بياخدوا تعليم جيد، exposed لانفايرمنت جيد بره المدرسه، المدرسين بتوعهم مدرسين كواليفايد. فالمشكله مش في الاولاد ولا في المدرسين، لان احنا لما هنتكلم على تجربه زي التجربه بتاعه الاي بي، احنا عملنا مدرستين اي بي بابليك سكولز بالبرامج المصريه مع مدرسين الوزاره، والمدرستين هيبقوا جالهم ايفالويشن فيزيت من الاي بي او اللي هي الاورجنايزيشن بتاعه الانترناشونال بكالوريا، وفعلا انبهروا بمستوى الولاد ومستوى المدرسين. المدرسين كلهم مدرسين من الوزارة، الأولاد كلها ولاد كانت في مدارس حكومية وانتقلت من المدارس الحكومية للسيستم بتاع الاي بي، لأنه اتعمل بطريقة مظبوطة. الولاد ماشية كويس جدا في التعليم. علشان ده يحصل وكل واحد ياخد فعلا حقه في التعليم بطريقة مظبوطة، والمدرسين تبقى على قدر يقدر يؤدي بالكواليتي اللي احنا عايزينها النهارده، احنا محتاجين فعلا زي ما دكتور احمد قال، محتاجين المشاركه المجتمعيه. وعلشان ندي افكار للمشاركه المجتمعيه ممكن تشارك بايه او ازاي، هنسمع النهارده تجارب بلاد من انجح البلاد النهارده في التعليم. وهنبتدي بفنلندا. معانا سفيره فنلندا السيده تولا يورولا، هتدلنا بريفنج عن السيستم بتاع التعليم في فنلندا.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear co-panelists, excellencies, I'm really honored to share some thoughts on the Finnish experience in education reform. I'm definitely not an expert on the subject, but I do hope that my personal reflections will be of help. In fact, much of what I will say is based on research by Professor Pasi Salberi, who is one of the foremost experts, not only on the Finnish educational system, but also on educational system reform in general. He was here in Cairo in January, and his thoughts were received with quite a lot of interest here in Egypt. I would also like to try to draw some parallels between the Finnish and Egyptian situations, even if the size of our populations and of course historical experiences is quite different. Anyway, so Finland has over the past few decades developed its own vision of educational and social change, which is based on inclusiveness and creativity. And we have not copied a standardized vision from other countries. So of course also our system cannot be copy-pasted to another country, for example Egypt, but we do have experience on certain best practices, and we're very happy to share those. And in fact my sincere hope is that Finnish experts can contribute more concretely to education reform process here in Egypt in the coming months and years. Finland has gone through a reform of its education system from the beginning of the 1970s, and the second round of reform was in the early 1990s. In fact, our system was still quite mediocre in the 1980s, and today it's considered a model of educational excellence and equity. And I will get back to the word equity because I think that is key to everything. So we've been able to create an educational system where students learn well and where equitable education has translated into very little variation in student performance between different schools in different parts of the country. And this has been achieved with reasonable financial expenditures and actually with less effort than most other nations have expended on reform efforts. The underlying philosophical and educational assumption behind our system is simply that the role of public education is to educate citizens to think critically and independently. And of course, every country's historical experiences affect their social policies and national priorities. For Finland, a focus on education is closely tied to the overall development of our country since the Second World War. In the 1950s, educational opportunities in Finland were quite unequal, but the new political environment after the Second World War activated working class families to want better opportunities for their children, and we also recognized the need for a better educated population to compete internationally. So while in the 1960s to let's say up to 1990, in Finland the Nordic Welfare Society was being created and strengthened, and we also had a growth of a service sector from, let's say, beginning an agricultural country, then industrialization to a service economy. And during this time a public comprehensive school system was developed. From the mid-1980s until today, the focus has been on improving the quality of basic education and also on expanding higher education to keep up with Finland's identity as a high-tech and knowledge-based economy. But then in the early 1990s, we had an unexpected and highly disruptive recession in Finland, which really brought the country to the edge of financial breakdown. This was due in part to the collapse of the Soviet Union and therefore our biggest trading partner at the time, and a number of other reasons. But nevertheless, we recognized that really bold and immediate measures were needed at that time. Now, I think that it's important here to recognize when we look into the situation in Egypt today that what a parallel there is. This means that for some of our key policies and changes in education reform, these were introduced during the worst economic crisis that Finland had experienced since the Second World War. So in education, even in this time of deep economic crisis, the policymakers were able to build on an innovation from the 1970s, which had been the 9-year comprehensive basic school system. Today, we are again in need of reforms in Finland due to the changing world around us, and we recognize the need to make sure that our education system is up to the task of strengthening sources of growth, intellectual capital, and entrepreneurship, and of course to continually improve the overall knowledge base of the population. And we recognize that the weaknesses in the chain of skills must be addressed at all levels and all forms of education. As I think pretty much everyone these days seems to know, in international comparisons of competitiveness, Finland always, or repeatedly, let's say, comes up close to the top. But we're obviously not the only ones to recognize that raising the quality of education and research plays a key role in sustainable competitiveness. We've linked educational reform to the creative development of economic competitiveness and also to the development of social cohesion, inclusiveness, and shared community. And our rise in Finland to the forefront of productivity and technology would really not have been possible without long-term investment in human capital and expertise. So we know that long-term growth and well-being are based on productivity and skilled labor. Now this is of course especially true for a country like Finland with a population of 5.4 million. I mean, we need every citizen to participate in the maintenance of our living standards and sustain success. But of course it's no less true for a country such as Egypt, where there is a need to develop the economy and to make use of the talent which maybe today is hidden because of uneven access to quality education for people, depending on their, for example, social status. So, ladies and gentlemen, since Egypt is currently looking into reform of its basic education system, I will focus on a few points relevant to that. And I will also touch briefly on the role of civil society. Now, the role of businesses and corporate social responsibility would mean that I really should be talking more also about vocational education and training, but I guess you'll have to invite me next year for me to continue on that line. Anyway, so one of the basic principles of our education system is simply that all people must have equal access to high quality education and training, irrespective of their ethnic origin, age, wealth, or where they live. The education system in Finland is very much based on trust and responsibility. And in fact, very, very basic to the new culture in education, and I'm really talking about the one that has developed in Finland since early 1990s. It's the cultivation of trust between the education authorities and schools. We have high educational autonomy. For example, even going down to the level of teachers, teachers have pedagogical autonomy. They can decide themselves the methods of teaching, as well as which textbooks and materials to use. And in fact, one of our most successful reforms has related to the systematic development of a respectful and inspiring working place for teachers and principals in schools. Because when the teaching profession is highly regarded, the best and the brightest young people choose it as a career. And in Finland, in fact, teaching has become the #1 profession among young Finns, even above medicine and law. And on the other hand, in order for teachers to succeed in teaching children from very different social and intellectual backgrounds, which of course is the basic premise when we're talking about providing every child with the same educational possibilities, it has been necessary to have a fundamentally new approach to teaching and to learning. So we today have highly educated teachers who are capable of dealing with the challenges and also capable of developing the system themselves. And teachers, in fact, are required to have a master's degree in Finland. Teachers also teach less, and students spend less time studying than in other countries. So rather than increasing the time for teaching and learning, testing students more frequently, or insisting that the students work harder on their homework, Finland has done exactly the opposite. At the same time, quality assurance is based on steering rather than controlling. So the system really relies on the professionality of the teachers and other personnel on self-evaluation. Now I want to say just a couple of words on early childhood education, because that is the cornerstone of everything that comes after. Again, a little bit different in Finland than in many other countries, because the main aim of early childhood education, and so that's for 1 to 5-year-olds, and pre-primary education, which begins at the age of 6, it really is just to enhance the health and well-being of the child. This means that kindergarten, for example, does not focus on preparing the children for school academically. Neither does the pre-primary year at age 6. The idea is to promote the children's growth into individuals and ethically responsible members of society. So compulsory education only starts when a child turns 7, and then it lasts 9 years. After the 9 years, most students continue their studies. And in fact, more than 90% of the age group starts general or vocational upper education immediately after the basic education. And then this will give them chances to move forward to higher education. On vocational education, I would just say that it's a very popular choice for students after the compulsory basic education. I think there an important aspect is that there is transferability from general to vocational education, and vice versa also at the upper secondary level. And the educational system doesn't have any dead ends. It's always possible to continue on to a higher level. So when you are a young person, you do not get stuck on one path simply because you chose so at the age, say, of 16 or something. Actually, there is even counseling in schools through your education process, so that you know to make the right choices. I would say that the Finnish success story is based on cooperation, on creativity, on giving responsibility to the professionals and on trusting them to do the job, on the professionalization of teachers through requiring advanced degrees from them, and on equity. If you think of the opposite of that, which in fact is very popular around the world but has not produced as good results, that is an education system which is based on competition between schools, on standardization, on test-based accountability for schools, on the deprofessionalization of teachers, and on privatization of schools in the hopes that they perform better than publicly funded institutions. And in fact, the highest performing education systems around the world are those that combine excellence and equity. And really the most important factor that has in fact guaranteed the success of our system has been the emphasis on equity. So I think that in developing the system here in Egypt, our primary recommendation would be a systematic investment in equity in education. I mean, of course, one has to take cultural attitudes into account, but through proper policy, equity can be built into the system, and over time this can of course also lead to attitudes changing. Equity in education simply means that all students should have access to high quality education regardless of where they live, who their parents are, or what school they attend. It doesn't mean that all students should be taught the same curriculum or should achieve the same learning outcomes. So an educational system that is equitable and where students learn well is also actually able to address the effects of broader social and economic inequalities. And it's interesting that according to OECD, strengthening equity can also be cost beneficial. So it's not about money, it's about attitudes and about developing the right drivers. In Finland, the development of our model has not been only the work of politicians and authorities. School practitioners, academics, as well as Finland's civil society organizations have played an important role over the years in this process. And there has been an open discussion, public discussion about it all the time. In fact, the network of non-governmental groups contributes significantly to the social and personal development also of young Finns, and therefore also to the educational performance in Finnish schools. Now, one factor that I really have to emphasize is, and which has been so essential to our success, is the focus on teachers' professional development and granting them the autonomy. The teacher's high level of education leads to the best people wanting to become teachers. But on the other hand, these people also stay in the teaching profession when they know that their profession is appreciated and that they are trusted. And in countries where the emphasis is on constantly measuring the teacher's success in teaching through, say, standardized testing on students, the teachers have less space to do what they know best. So the assumption that teachers are bad and therefore the students do not learn is just too straightforward. Our system has been designed in a way that builds on the capacities of the teachers, and it enables clear lines of management and also creates forums for exchanging experience, networking between teachers, between schools. And the entire system is built on a shared ownership of the goals. Then traditional, let's say, school organization, which is based on presentation and recitation models of instruction, on age groupings, on fixed teaching schedules, and on the dominance of classroom-based work, we've been moving away from that gradually and transforming our system to provide a more flexible, open, and interaction-rich learning environment where the student plays an active role. And again, this of course places great responsibility on the teacher, which then gets us back to strong teacher education and pedagogical excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, annually about 94% of the students who graduate from the 9-year comprehensive school, basic school, immediately continue their studies. And it's been estimated that each young person who does not complete upper secondary school will, on the average, cost $1.4 million to the society in lost tax revenues, in increased health and social costs, and often chronic unemployment. Now, while the Egyptian economic setup may not produce the same kind of numbers or not quite the same system, I think it's clear that the lack of proper education of each child is a lost opportunity from the point of view of national economic development. As I mentioned, compulsory education in Finland ends at age 16. Rather than making the upper secondary education compulsory, Finnish policies rely on developing equal opportunities for everyone to participate in upper secondary education, but it's a matter of individual choice. And our overall graduation rates are internationally high, and in fact also dropout rates substantially lower than in most other countries. So the system has built-in incentives both for students and for schools to keep the students in education. The education reform here, or anywhere for that matter, of course, should have a positive image from the start. And if parents see that the government and its partners, the civil society, the private sector, are working together to provide for better education to all the children in Egypt, I think this will provide ample political capital for the government at a time when people are worried about their futures. And this is why I personally am really hoping that we can also contribute to this education reform here. I spent the long weekend preparing for this by reading a book by Dr. Sahlberg, whom I mentioned earlier, Finnish Lessons 2.0. I recommend it for everyone. And he had a great quote in the beginning of the book. In fact, it was Einstein's definition of madness: keep doing the same thing while expecting to get a different result. And his point was that around the world, education reform is attempted through pressure, top-down intervention, markets, competition, standardization, testing, bringing people with no teaching experience to teach, closing failing schools, firing ineffective teachers, and so on. And in fact, these reform strategies have failed over and over again during the past 2 decades to build into building better systems. And the countries that have taken more innovative paths are now doing much better. They're encouraging local autonomy and innovation, decentralizing the systems, and promoting a creative environment. Finland is one of them, but certainly not the only one. But our example shows that the systemic improvement of the educational system is possible when the policies and strategies are designed in smart and sustainable ways. And there are different paths to education reform, and not all of them work as well. So in looking forward, Egypt needs a sustainable education policy and, of course, the leadership for it. And as Dr. Sahlberg put it when he was here in January, more policy and less politics is important. It's also important to recognize early on any wrong policy drivers, because the toughest solutions may not be the most efficient. In Finland, we see education as a public good, and it has a strong nation-building function. And I think any society needs social cohesion, and education, is key to strengthening it. This goes for Egypt as well. So finally, during the past 3 decades, Finland has made steady progress within 4 main domains. First of all, increased levels of educational attainment for the adult population. Secondly, widespread equity in terms of the learning outcomes and in terms of performance of schools. Thirdly, improved student learning as measured by international assessments such as the PISA studies. And fourth, efficiency in using human and financial resources. Our system is paid almost solely from public sources. Now, since there are business people present in the audience, as well as representatives of government bodies concerned with cost, I would like to finish with touching on the cost of our education system to the Finnish taxpayer. So education in Finland at all levels is free. And in addition to ensure opportunities for everyone to study, there's a well-developed system of study grants and loans. Comparing to other OECD countries, public and private investment in Finnish education increased from 34% in 1995, or from 1995 to 2004 in real terms, so 34%. The OECD average during that time was 42%. And total public expenditure on educational institutions as a percentage of GDP in Finland was 6.5% in 2011, for which I have the figure. And this is close to the OECD average of 6.1, and it's less spending than in the USA and Canada, for example. So Finland has accomplished world-class educational performance at a reasonable cost. We've done it at a time when we had economic difficulties, and yet we managed, because of, I think, let's say, good planning, but also a national consensus, and at the top, of course, a political consensus and the fact that it needs to be done. So, thank you. I hope I didn't take too much of your time, and I do hope that I've been able to touch on some issues that are of relevance to Egypt. Shukran.
Thank you, Your Excellency. ودلوقتي هنسمع مع بعض التجربة البريطانية مع السيد جيف ستريتر من السفارة البريطانية. هو المدير الحالي للمجلس الثقافي البريطاني بالقاهرة، وشغل العديد من المناصب بأوروبا وأمريكا اللاتينية وآسيا، وهو متخصص في مجال التعليم.
Thank you, Dr. Namin, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. Just one thing I'd just like to pick up that the Deputy Minister said earlier. I thought it was a very good point that when you're looking at technical vocational education, it has to be a partnership between educationalists and enterprise, and I think that's something that we need to remember when we're looking at any education reform process. I think the ambassadors touched on this. It's a process between educationalists and society, wider society as well. It's not only about what happens within the education system. I would like to begin by being undiplomatic and slightly disagreeing with the ambassador. I remember when her speaker, who was an excellent speaker, came in January to give his speech. Part of his talk was implicitly a critique of the inadequacy of what one might call the Anglo-Saxon model, that by going the route of standardization, league tables, competition, that there was failure being heaped up around the world, and I remember he put some hotspots of failure around the world. Well, I'm not personally necessarily the world's greatest advocate of all of those approaches, but I think when we look at failure, I think it depends on what we mean by failure or success. In the UK now, we can say that we have one of the lowest figures of youth unemployment in Europe, and it's going down very quickly. So that's working. We're getting people into jobs. We have arguably the best higher education system in Europe and one of the best in the world, and certainly in terms of measurement of quality of output of research, our citation rates in terms of the way that they're used around the world is perhaps #1 in the world. So lots are working in this system, which according to some experts is not the right way to go ahead. So I think that what tells me is there is not going to be one approach that works. It will depend, again, as the ambassador said, a lot on social context. And it also depends on how we measure success. And I think I'd also like to pick up on something that Dr. Namin mentioned just now about the amazing thing that happens when you give Egyptian students the opportunities to thrive. And she touched on the IGCSE exams, which come from the UK. And it was a privilege this summer to see some of the very best students in the world who were, again, in their subjects, matched across the world, were in the garden in Egypt. They're Egyptian students who've done a fantastic job. So I think it's a really indication of how Egyptian students are ready for the challenge of us giving them the opportunities to learn and show how fantastic they are. But I think that what I was asked to do today was just look at some of the lessons to be learnt from reform process. And of course the UK supports the education reform processes around the world. Specifically, the British Council operates in many countries looking at English language improvement, whether it's Japan, Malaysia, India, and many other countries, including Germany, around the world to support English language development. And we hope also here with the Ministry in an ambitious new project. But more importantly, looking at the bigger picture for education reform, and particularly basic education, as has been noted, there needs to be a great deal of stakeholder management, working with all sections of society to build, first of all, a consensus. And that consensus needs then, in the second point really, to lead to a plan, one plan, which of course will be owned by the ministry in the country, but a plan that others can sign up to if others are sought for help. So in this case, if if the UK or Finland or Malaysia or Germany wishes to support the education reform process in Egypt, then having an agreement about one plan, one roadmap, if I may use that expression, will ultimately really be important, and it has to be obviously owned by the ministry to take us forward, because otherwise it's very difficult for us to get all of our efforts going in one direction. And I think the history of education reform around the world is often isolated pockets of reform rather than one concerted effort of reform. And I think we'd all agree that when you have one plan, one vision, and everybody gets behind it, you have a much greater degree, a likelihood of success. Another thing that international experience demonstrates is having a good handle on the data. And we saw some amazing data about demographics in Egypt and some specific work done on the basis of analysis of data. And I think the same applies to education systems. So having good data systems is important. Having then analysis to look at the certain things that one can change, one needs to change, whether it's literacy rate, a numeracy rate, or some other feature. And then the ability in the system to focus on a plan, which again people will get behind, to focus down on those issues and improve those measurements over a period of time. And those have to be measurements of outcomes and outputs, not simply what are we going to do, but what will be the results. So how can we improve literacy rates from X% to X plus 2, numeracy rates from X% to X plus 3, etc. So a focus on outputs really is a third area here that's, I think, terribly important. The fourth area, I think, we may call school leadership or governance or autonomy. To what extent do you give autonomy to school leaderships? There needs to be a vision in the country, there needs to be some core standards, but then you need to have some freedom as a school leader, and certainly you need support in order to make it happen in your school or in your district. So development of school leadership is seen as correlates very strongly around the world to excellence in schools. And a fifth point would be the teachers themselves, of course, teacher development. And an investment in teacher development is something I think most, if not all, educationists will believe it has to be in the forefront of any plan for any education reform process. The teachers in the end are the people who are there to facilitate the learning, to inspire our young people, and to assess them, we hope, along the way. And it's there that we need to put so much of our emphasis in terms of pre-service and then in-service training along the way. So all of those things, I think, are some of those key ingredients that would go into a successful reform process. And in the interest of time, I think I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
ودلوقتي هنسمع المتحدث الأخير في هذه الجلسة، وهو السيد إسحاق سليمان، مدير قسم الدراسات الماليزية بكلية الاقتصاد والعلوم السياسية جامعة القاهرة، والقائم بأعمال نائب مدير أكاديمية بحوث تنمية الدراسات بسفارة ماليزيا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and very good morning. First of all, thank you to Mrs. Nermin Naomi as the moderator for this session. Excellencies, Mrs. Tuala Roger from Finnish Ambassador to Egypt, and also Mr. Jeff Streeter, the Ambassador of England in Egypt, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank particularly to the organizer inviting me to share on Malaysian experience on corporate social responsibility, and also on behalf of Embassy of Malaysia, I would like to share some points regarding our performance, what is all about the corporate social responsibility in Malaysia. And I have two sessions in my presentation. The first, I would like to share some points regarding our achievement on CSR activities and how its impact to the society and the country. And the last part of my session is to share 5 minutes video how one sector or one department from the University of Malaya in Malaysia operates kind of social or corporate social responsibility in order to achieve the requires from the government, and also sharing all what we have done in the university to the best of the society. So first of all, I would like to share that in Malaysia, actually we are at the stage of CSR activities, how it impacts to the society and to the country. We are not talking about the philosophy of the CSR itself, because we have started the activity of CSR since the 1980s in our country. And we are very lucky because the government itself has put as a policy for the country to have the CSR as one of the main agenda for the country. So through the system of education, we have particular subjects on CSR activity from the level of early education, from kindergarten, from primary school, secondary school, up to the university levels. So it's not about the philosophy how to start and how to get money to operate CSR activities, but how the impacts. In Malaysia, we are talking about how the impact of CSR activities to the stability of the country and to the peace and harmony and to the happiness of the people. And we want to have more than that. We want to have that CSR activities should be one of the main activity for the people. For example, in 2008, the Prime Minister's office has introduced kind of Prime Minister's CSR award for those, particularly for the companies, particularly for the NGOs, non-government organizations and individuals who took part and give their contributions to the CSR. Because we believe that as the challenges are very high in terms of many aspects of life, for the economics, politics, and so on, so one of the main strategy in our country is to share the responsibility not only from the government but also from other parts of the society in the country, particularly from the GLC. What we call GLC is the government-linked companies, from the big companies, from the outsiders, like from Japan, from Korea as well, and also from the NGOs, non-government organization, because Alhamdulillah, I would like to share here that the increasing of numbers of NGOs in Malaysia is very amazing. Because we have been trained, we have been, even we have an examination papers on how we should conduct CSR activity at many levels of our educations. I still remember that when I was a student of university, for 14 weeks of my semester, there is a subject that we have to manage activity on CSR, and we have to deal with other parties, with the governments, with the society, with the leaders of many parts of our projects, and guided by our lecturer, and we have to report. And there is kind of competition between us, how our activity can be influenced to many aspects of the life of the project and so on. So we have to handle the project properly. We have to get the money, not only from the government, from any parts that are willing to contribute to these projects. And at the end, we have to write the books. We have to publish the papers. And we have to, everything must be compiled and should be revealed to others. And in my days, we only have papers. We only have newspapers, magazines to advertise what we done from our programs. So nowadays, it is very obvious for Malaysian people, particularly Malaysian students, to involve with this kind of activities, not only to get A, to score A for the subject, but in order to have our own job whenever we finish our study at university level. So that is the beauty for me, how CSR activities has contributed not only for the problems of unemployment, for the problems of, as we discussed, we followed and we seen from the previous session, but I do believe that if the government itself have a very good policies, for example, in Malaysia, there is kind of tax incentives for the big companies who participated in many CSR activities. They will get kind of exempted for some percents. And also, they will be acknowledged as the good company that in their relationship with the consumers. And from my observations, I can see the big companies like McDonald's, like Petronas, Malaysian company, and you can name it, the Samsung's company in Malaysia, even Nestle. If you go to the Google, you can type CSR in Malaysia, handled or organized by this type of company. You can see and you can review and you can see how the achievement of this kind of activity. And my second point here is, I would like to focus on how the education side can contribute a large portion to the stability of CSR. In Malaysia, apart from the curriculum, we also have the combination between the government and NGOs in manage and in give a good activity. But we are focusing on how the impacts of CSR activity to the certain area, particularly area, for example, how we can have a good CSR activity for those who are incapable, for those, maybe for the blind people who can learn in many types of education. And at the end of the day, we can see not only government took part in the education, but also from the society. So that's why there are three aspects that we are focusing on the CSR activity in Malaysia. First is the education. How the CSR activity contribute to the development of education in Malaysia. And secondly, for the environment sustainability, how there are many programs or projects or activities that deal with the environment in order to keep the sustainability and the preservation of the environment. That is very important in Malaysia. And the third one, we're focusing on the stability of society and how the impacts of this program of CSR can maintain the peace and harmony in Malaysia, because we are a plural society. We are not Malaysia not only consists of Malay, but we also have Chinese, Indians, and the other races. And by doing this kind of activity of CSR, actually they will enhance the relationships, enhance our tolerance. It also will make us as one nation. And that's why the government introduced the One Malaysian policy. We call it Satu Malaysia, in order to bridge the gap, in order to make that these differences actually can be met with one of the activities is through CSR activities. So to conclude this my presentations, I would like to suggest, particularly to the education friends, the establishment of my department, which I introduced by the moderator as the Department of Malaysian Studies in Cairo, at Cairo University, actually is the part of CSR from the University of Malaya between Cairo University. This department is fully funded by University of Malaya itself, not from the government, from the Malaysian government. We have to seek our own money, our own financial, how to survive from 2003 until now. And yet we're still looking for the partners, good partners, because from the CSR activity actually is about win-win situation. When we give, actually we need to have a good relations, not only for the certain period, but for the long one. So if you go to the Cairo University, please visit us at the Department of Nation Studies. So we teach Arab students in Cairo, particularly at Cairo University, how our history, how our performance, and how we develop our country, although we are developing countries. And we want to get together from the Egyptian students to do some things, but still have a challenge in many ways. But I wish this year I can start something that we can work together between Malaysian and Egyptian students. And inshallah, this evening we will have the first program forever in our bilateral relationship between Egypt and Malaysia. We will have a youth sports and culture activities at the Shabab clubs here. So you are welcome to join this kind of, also we classify it as a CSR activity. Through the bilateral relation in the activity, we call it as youth to the sports and culture activity. So back to the discussion of my department of Nation Studies at Cairo University. After 13 years, the establishment of university, actually I'm looking for the partners, particularly not only from the Cairo University, but from any Egyptians who can work together through the CSR activities. Between Malaysian here, we have 11,000 Malaysian students in Egypt. I think this is not a small number, it's a big number. But do you know that how, actually I would like to share only, not to be proud, but to share that last Friday, one graduated medical student from Alexandria University, her name is Fatiha. He managed to organize a charity concert at Azhar Center, for the Al-Azhar Center, Convention Center, last Friday, and collaborate with the NGO students here in Malaysia also. And these ladies brought 4 singers from Malaysia, performed a few songs, sorry. And then within 3 hours, we have raised 150,000 Egyptian pounds in order to give this kind of fund to the Syrian immigrants in Jordan, particularly to contribute and to assist their schools in Jordan. So this is the example that I would like to share, that we have already trained our students, although in Egypt, to be familiar, to conduct and to manage this type of CSR activity. So for the last sessions, I would like to share 5 minutes video that from the University of Malaya, how we operate, what the type of CSR activity, and we wish to continue this activity for the betterment of Malaysia. And please enjoy this video for 5 minutes.
My main goal in life is to make a positive difference in the world.
I believe in empowering others to succeed.
I can change the world.
by helping one person at a time.
Nobody can do everything, but together we can do something. And this is what it's all about.
So let's make the world a better place.
And let's create a change for a better world.
UMCAS is a place for the volunteers to join hands to help the community.
Our team is very much driven. It is our passion to help others.
We are committed in community engagement and environmental sustainability.
The role of UMCAS is to facilitate and assist the academic and the support staff to transfer the expertise and technologies developed from the research to benefit the community directly.
We help the community through skill development, knowledge transfer, income opportunities, community building.
We have established a plant tissue culture lab and nursery in Rembau Community College.
It is through biotechnology research, UM has established a plant tissue culture procedure. The community college is given a chance to set up business through sales of banana and planting materials.
Besides creating an employment opportunity, the students can also be entrepreneurs.
The collaboration with UMCAS have given us the opportunity to set up business through sale of banana tissue culture and field planting.
The effort by UMCAS has helped the community college in Rembau successfully. The result that we gain from the public are positive, and in the near future we hope that other community colleges will join us too. We always care about the importance of education for the community.
The lecturers have conducted so many classes for the past few years.
Some of the kids have improved tremendously, and I am very, very happy.
Saya ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada UMCAS kerana sudi membantu pelajaran anak-anak kami. Do you remember our visit to Bumsang? Yes, we have helped the community that was affected by the flood.
Masa kami berada dalam keadaan kritikal, UMCAS datang melawat kami dan menolong menyelesaikan masalah ini.
Banjir itu telah menyebabkan kami mengalami masalah air kurang berkualiti. Teknologi penapisan air ultrafiltration ni telah bantu memulihkan kitaran air yang lebih berkualiti.
The technology has helped many lives. It really means a lot to us.
Terima kasih UMCAS.
Terima kasih UMCAS sebab memang berat tentang kehidupan kami.
UM had signed an MOU with Tesco to initiate a program called Tabung Jalinan Budi. It is to raise funds to help the children in need.
The sole purpose of Tabung Jalinan Budi is to help Palestinian children who lost their legs in the war.
As a partner in Tabung Jalinan Budi, it is our responsibility to ensure these children receive their prosthetic legs.
As an institution, we also help the Palestinian teenagers receive educational support. We provide them with English and IT classes. Our deepest gratitude to the lecturers and students who helped contributed to this program.
Our efforts will not materialize without the undaunted drive of friends and volunteers. A big thank you to them.
Even the smallest help can still make a big difference, you know?
Join us to help UM make a difference to you and the society.
Thank you.
أنا بشكر في النهاية سيادة السفيرة Her Excellency Tula Yurula. I hope that I pronounced right your name. والسيد جيف ستريتر والسيد إسحاق سليمان. في حاجة بس أخيرة أحب أقولها قبل ما ننهي الندوة دي. طبعا احنا محتاجين المشاركة المجتمعية علشان نقدر فعلا نعمل نهوض حقيقي للتعليم، لكن المشاركة المجتمعية أحيانا بتكون في بروجكت بعد ما بينتهي البروجكت بعد سنة أو سنتين مش بنلاقيه خلاص، لأننا ما بنشتغلش فعلا في البروفايل بتاع الستودنت والبروفايل بتاع التيتشر اللي احنا محتاجينه النهارده. احنا محتاجين النهارده ستودنت لما نعمل له صيانة في المدرسة يعرف يحافظ عليه. محتاجين لما نعلمه يقرا يعرف يروح يجيب كتاب من المكتبة ويقرا ويحب القراية. فيا ريت نحاول نفكر ان احنا نشتغل شوية على الستودنت بروفايل، ان احنا في الاخر عايزين independent learners يقدروا يتعلموا جوه المدرسة وبره المدرسة. أنا بشكر حضرتك.
الحقيقة يعني كما جاءت الجلسة الأولى ساخنة ومهمة، جاءت أيضا الجلسة الثانية في غاية الأهمية، وتم الاستفادة من التجارب والخبرات الدولية مثل التجربة الفنلندية والتي أصبحت تتبوأ المرتبة الأولى في التعليم في تقرير التنافسية العالمي، وأيضا التجربة البريطانية التي تجمع بين العراقة والحداثة، والتجربة الماليزية والتي نجحت أن تفرض نفسها على الساحة الدولية كنموذج لدول العالم الثالث، والتي أصبحت في صدارة النمو الآسيوي. حقيقة يعني